Welcome to the To Your Health podcast, your go-to source for everything health, wellness, fitness, and the latest in medical insights. I'm your host, Rhonda Alfred, and joining us on this episode is Michelle Briceno, a board-certified registered dietitian with Terrebonne General Weight Management. Thanks for joining us today, Michelle.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we're going to dive into our conversation about National Nutrition Month. I know you're the expert, and I love having you on. So, first of all, tell us, what is National Nutrition Month and why is it important?
So National Nutrition Month was actually developed in 1973. So it's been around for a while. It's the entire month of March, and it's a way for people to have an accurate source of information to discuss nutrition and hydration and physical activity in a safe space where they can get good information.
Times change, and so what does healthy eating mean today?
Healthy eating means more so about getting foods from every food group, a variety of foods from every food group, and having more whole foods versus more processed foods to help prevent chronic illness.
And what are some of the most common myths you hear from people about food?
There are tons of them. You have to eat 1,200 calories or less to lose weight. Or potatoes and rice are bad for you.
Yeah, I've heard both of those.
Yes, there are plenty of them. And usually it stems from social media, or this person followed some strange diet and it worked for them, but we're all unique and different and doesn't always work that way.
So how can small nutrition changes make a big impact on your overall health?
A lot of people like to think that they have to go, 360. They have to go from one extreme to the next when it comes to food. But sometimes something as simple as if you're using 80% ground beef to a 93% ground beef, something small like that can make significant impacts as far as the calories you're consuming, but also some of the things in those foods that we watch, like dietary fat.
That's amazing. Just going from the 80-20 to the 93 can make a huge difference.
Huge difference.
I mean, in the calorie intake and the fat content, all that is
all the
taken
things,
into account.
Yes, all the things that we watch in a diet for health, we can make very small changes.
So what does a balanced plate look like? And can you explain how my plate works? And did this replace the food pyramid?
So years ago, we had the old food pyramid. I used to say it had the little man running up the side of it. And what it did is tell us about the 5 food groups and that physical activity is an important factor. It was great, and it helped teach us what the food groups are. But then my plate came along and it took the place of that. And my plate was more what your plate should look like. We call it the plate method. I work in diabetes and weight management, and we often say the easiest method of watching what you're doing is using the plate method. And that is half of your plate to be fruits and vegetables, a quarter of your plate is going to be a lean protein source, and then the other quarter would be your grain source. So we tell people the My Plate represents what your plate should look like. It's very easy to understand. The newest plate, or the newest take on My Plate, is the upside down pyramid. That's called the new pyramid. And what it does is more so teach us that we should have more whole foods and a lot less processed foods. Not necessarily what your plate should look like, but what the order of having more of your good whole foods versus processed.
So can you use kind of both of those, the My Plate and the new pyramid, to fill your plate?
We like to still teach the plate method just because it makes a lot more sense. And from anyone from a small child to an older adult, it's easy to follow. It's visual and people love visuals.
Yes, for sure. It's easy to picture. So how can busy families eat healthier and make healthier food choices throughout the week?
I always say if you have 30 minutes, an hour to find somewhere on a day to cook, utilize different methods. So if you have a stove and an oven and a slow cooker and an air fryer, you can fix completely separate meals in each one of those at the same time. And so, you can utilize 2 different methods of cooking, and then you have food for a few days. Or find a one-pot meal or a sheet pan meal. If you don't like to cook, you throw it on a pan and you put it in the oven, and in 20 minutes it's done. So it doesn't have to be difficult. It's just to find the right recipes that work for you.
It seems like you can use a lot more fresh recipes when you're doing something like that.
Absolutely.
So that seems like a good tip. What role does nutrition play in chronic diseases?
Nutrition is vital. So the foods that we eat are the fuel for our body. And what we put in our body makes a big difference in overall. In the short term, it may not be that big of a difference. But if you abuse that on a regular basis, eventually chronic illness can happen. So too much added sugar and too much sodium or salt and too much, heart harming fats, they can increase your risk of those chronic illnesses.
So very important.
Very
You are
important.
what you eat.
Yes.
They do say that, don't
Put that
they?
premium fuel in that vehicle. Yes.
Okay. And how important is portion control as opposed to food quality?
They're equal. Portion control is more so about the serving of the food. So, a specific serving size equals so many calories. Okay, so calories are important for weight control. The quality of the food is just as equally important, because something that has more quality to it is your macronutrients, which are the things that protect your health. So weight and calories are important, but the quality of those calories matter as well. So if you eat a 100-calorie pack of cookies versus a 100-calorie banana, there's still 100 calories, but one's going to have more nutrient quality to it than the other. Also, one's a much bigger portion than the other. And so those kind of things are going to matter. It's a calorie, but they can cause issues if we consume too many of the not so good calories.
So some are good calories and some are bad calories.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, just like a good cholesterol and a bad cholesterol.
Yes.
There's good and bad and everything. So are carbs, fats, and sugars really the enemy?
So we look at food as macronutrients, which are going to be proteins, carbs, and fats.
Okay.
There are good and bad of each of those food groups, or of those macronutrients. And so we want more 80% of the good ones and 20% of the not so good ones, and we want that good balance. So saying completely I'm cutting all carbs out of my diet is not good, because they're your body's main source of fuel. You need them in the right portions and the right kinds, just like anything else. So to villainize one of them completely is definitely not for everyone.
Right. I think some of those fad diets do that. It's like, don't eat this or don't
Absolutely
eat all of
yes.
this. And, people can't maintain that either.
And anything that restricts something completely should be looked at as a second guess, that kind of thing.
So how can people eat healthier without feeling restricted?
So back to the plate method. So I always say, like, let's say you want shrimp stew tonight. And so a quarter of your plate should be that protein source, which is your shrimp stew. A quarter of your plate should be your rice, which is your grain. And then have that good half of your plate where majority of your volume comes from those fruits and vegetables. That way you can still enjoy the foods that are a little higher in calorie, but you can also fill it in with those lower calorie, better nutrient foods.
What advice do you have for reading food labels?
A lot of people want to either just check the serving size and the calories. I also recommend to know if there's a specific health condition that you're trying to watch, like your salt intake or your cholesterol, things like that, or more dietary fiber. It's important to know the aspect of the label that you are the most interested in. Not everything, because not everything is going to apply to everybody. The easiest way to look at a label is to use what we call the 5-20 rule. And so the daily values on the right-hand side of the label, anything that has 5% or less is considered low in that item. And anything 20% or greater is high in that item. So depending on what you're looking at, you can use the rule to determine if something is good or bad for you.
For whatever reason, I always look at the calories and the fat content.
And so that's something that you look for. And for other people, they look at the salt. That's their main thing, or sugars.
So how does nutrition need to change with your age?
So from birth all the way to death, our nutrition varies as we get older, and it's important that that changes. But other factors in our life change as well, as far as activity status. If you get pregnant or you're breastfeeding or you have certain health conditions, your nutrition, your vitamins and your mineral intake should change. And that comes from the foods that we're eating. So it's important that when you hit different life goals or life stages, that changes with you.
So you're more active, doing more exercise, then maybe you need to eat more carbs and protein and things to help fuel your body than when you're not. As you age, you're probably not moving around as much. So
and as we age, we need more calcium and vitamin D to protect our bones and our muscles and things like that. So
what are some simple swaps that people can make as they direct their diet? at age to improve their diet.
So we've talked about like changing different types of meats, choosing your lower fat dairy sources, can change your nutrition. There are a bunch of new products on the market now that have, lower fat or lower sugar, or, they're made out of better ingredients. So instead of like ranch, you can do a Greek ranch, which is lighter in calories and better nutrient wise. So there are a lot of things out there now, a lot more than there used to be able to make those simple swaps.
That does make it easy. So how does hydration impact your overall health and energy levels?
Water is vital. So water should be 50 to 70% of your total weight. And that means that if you're not drinking enough, that you definitely are not getting enough. It can impact everything from your joints. If you have problems with your joints, you're not hydrated, you'll have joint issues. It affects your temperature. It affects your bowel movements. I hear on a regular basis that people want to do a detox. You have organs that do that, but you need hydration in order to let your organs do what they need to. So it's very important. Weight management wise, it's important too. If you want to break down fat cells, you need fluids. So we want to make sure that everyone's getting enough.
One quick question, the last question. So what is one nutrition habit that you wish everyone would adopt?
That anytime you are eating a meal or a snack, you have either a fruit or a vegetable with it. Hands down. If you grab a cookie, you grab a cup of fruit to go with it.
I think that's simple enough for people to do.
Yep.
Well, thanks for leaving us with that one fun fact that everybody can do and make healthier decisions.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. For more information on weight management, visit tghealthsystem.com. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our podcast where you get your podcasts. Thanks for joining us.